In 1980, there's a documentary called The Decline and Fall of Western Civilization by Penelope Spheris. This was not a movie about history or civilization, a documentary, sorry. It was a documentary about punk rock in Southern California. And there was one incredibly interesting character in that movie, a French punk rock journalist named Kick Boy Face. During his segment, he opened it up by saying the following: I have some good news for the world. There is no such thing as new wave. I want to say something similar by paraphrasing what he said and announced that there is good news for the world. There is no such thing as multipolarity as it exists today, with the added caveat that it also might be bad news. So I want us all to step back here for a second and take a look at the world as it stands now, specifically Europe and its place in it, which is really what we're discussing here. Europe's place in the world and where we're going from here. Next year, we're going to be either commemorating or celebrating or lamenting 80 years since the end of the Second World War, the conflict that has given us the basis for our entire post-world order. 80 years of, and don't take this the wrong way, but it's been 80 years of occupation. Now, one half of that occupation fell off when the Berlin Wall was taken down in 1989, and the Soviets went home. We still have the Americans on our soil, and when you look at it objectively, it is, for all intents and purposes, an occupation. It is nowhere near as, let's say, heavy-handed as the Soviet one was, and there are some positive elements to it too, if you want to be fair. But at the end of the day, it is an occupation. It's an occupation that was built on the fallout of two brutal European civil wars from which our continent has yet to recover from. We have gone through several epochs of history since the beginning of that occupation, and we are now at a point where Europe has been technically united for 3 decades now since Maastricht, but it's flailing around looking for an actual purpose, or let's say a purpose that the people can get behind on how to tackle what's going to go and how we're going to move forward from here on in. So there's some good news and there's some bad news. There are some worries and there are some, more importantly in my opinion, opportunities from this current environment. Multipolarity is not a condition that can best describe the world right now. Here is why. The United States is still by far the preeminent global power. It's a hegemon. When you look at its competitors, revisionist states, whether it be Russia, China, or let's say Iran, there have been moves, of course, which Anton touched upon, especially with regarding to BRICS or organizations like this SCO, to create institutions that would rival what the West has. But when you look at it today, where is the competitor to the IMF? Where is the competitor to the World Bank? Where is their version of NATO? None of these things exist as it stands today. And it's going to take a lot of time before these revisionist powers are able to cobble together anything remotely resembling what exists here in the West today, that we're governed by. For example, here's my favorite example to use. The New Development Bank, AKA the BRICS Bank. There has been a lot of wish casting whereby this would turn into something equivalent to the World Bank. The NDB today, as it stands, is party to the sanctions regime against Russia. This is a case out of necessity. So they are aligned with the United States-led Western sanctions regime against Russia. That is not a very good start for a competitor to make. Second of all, there has been a lot of sensationalism attached to BRICS as well. There was calls for a BRICS currency. That's not happening. There have been calls even for the setup of a rival payment system to SWIFT by BRICS. Vladimir Putin, a few weeks ago in Kazan at the BRICS summit, said that's not happening either. So even though there is a reaction to a lot of the overreach led by the United States and the Western system on the part of these countries, there is a certain level of realism that some of these countries do have, in that the system that has arisen out of post-World War II order, Bretton Woods, et cetera, is so ingrained, so intricate, so integrated, and it's so difficult to manage and swim through, that's going to take a lot of time and effort in order to be able to challenge this existing system and the structures that have arisen from it. And saying that, you have to even figure that, are they going to be as this aligned 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road? With NATO and the EU, there's a lot more discipline that the United States can, I'd say, practice with its allies for economic, ideological reasons, legacy reasons, et cetera. With BRICS and other supposed challengers like the SCO, it's almost like herding cats. You need policy alignment in order to challenge something like the U.S. greenback, which is still something like 89% of all trade in currencies is still conducted through the U.S. dollar, if you factor in both sides. Second place is the euro, by the way. The Chinese renminbi is less than 4%, I think, at present. But the point that I'm trying to make is that policy alignment between countries like Russia, China, India, et cetera, is almost impossible to imagine, much less implement. So the United States is not going anywhere for the present time. The victory of Donald Trump is not a revolution either. It's more of a reversion to the mean. It actually entrenches liberalism in the classic sense, as opposed to the progressive sense that we have seen color the United States in the last 15, 20 years. So the Americans are here to stay, despite all the social experimentation that they've conducted over the last 15 years, let's say since the beginning of the Obama era. And 2 years ago, when I was first at MCC, there was a lovely American fellow named John from Cleveland, neocon at heart, absolute total neocon, and him and I came to the agreement that the United States has roughly about a 20-year head start on any potential competitors, which allows them to engage in this type of social experimentation, which we look at from an objective view and think, why are they doing this? Why are they introducing DEI? It just seems naturally that it's going to harm their interests. But they have a 20-year head start on all their competitors. And with Trump's victory now, you have the example of this gentleman from Fox News who has been nominated to head the Department of Defense. The reason why is he is going to, if he passes the nomination process, he is going to be tasked with removing all DEI from the entire armed force of the United States, because they've come to the decision that enough's enough. This is affecting our ability to conduct military operations around the globe. Saying this, the victory of Trump is not 100% positive for Europe, but there is a lot of positivity to be gained from it. In my opinion, the biggest positive from it and the biggest opportunity for Europe and for forces from Europe who are more national focused, let's say Viktor Orban's Community of Nations idea, as opposed to the Brussels bureaucracy that's existing at present, is that Trump's victory basically takes away mom and dad from the Brussels bureaucrats. They lose legitimacy with respect to the type of progressive liberalism that they have tried to export globally and that they have solidified into policy at the State Department. So Brussels and various national leaders that are aligned with Brussels, they are now flailing about trying to understand why this happened and how do they recover from this, because this victory by Trump has opened the doors up to populist forces in Europe and allowed them to gain more ground on this continent. I think we'll stop from there for now, and we'll move on to the next one. How's that sound?